Hey, dude, man, welcome to Bad Boy Running, and we've taken an age actually to get Ricky on. I've no idea why. We've even had him at the Run Show before, and you trying to think why you'd know Ricky mostly. He won Zagama years ago. He's won World Trail Champs, the long. He's won pretty much every fell and hard race there is in the north of England, and many, many more. So welcome on the podcast, the wonderful Ricky Lightfoot. Whee!
Cheers for having us on finally.
Yeah, my pleasure. I don't know. Just sometimes we have guests that we just never invited. We think, why? What happened there? And yeah. So apology, it's taken so long. I think we first met back at the Red Bull steeplechase years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
But you've just come back from. So you've just come back from the European Trail Running Champs.
Yes. Yeah, that was in Al de La Palma. So
How's
yeah, it
that?
was yeah, I mean it was a tough course. I didn't run particularly well. I sort of you know you run through so many mini climates on the island like that, which is obviously volcanic, and it's the most recent eruption one, so you run through ash fields and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it was a difficult climate to run in, and we descended, and I got a bit hot, and that sort of crushed my race a little bit, to be honest. But I think I finished 20th, which it's all right. It's not great, but you know, I give it
What would
what I
you have
could on the
been?
day.
What would you have been happy with? Do you think in that race?
Um, well, the other British lads finished 13th and 16th. And I would like to think, I'm getting older now, but I would like to think I could, get into the top 10. But yeah,
Hmm.
just I didn't have it on the day, unfortunately.
Now, today is the hottest day of the year. You work as so it's the hottest day in history, I believe, in the UK. You work as a fireman. Is that a complete nightmare?
What in terms of running or in terms of being a
Oh, just
firefighter?
in like just the heat, it being this hot, and I assume there's probably more fires, but also the heat in the station, the heat in a van, the heat in are you able to work okay with on days like this?
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that. Well, I was on nights last night and the night before, and we got a call out, and it was a building fire. Um, I just spent like best part of 4 hours running around the Borrowdale race route and then straight into work. So I only had time for a shower, and we got called out straight away to this building fire. And some people know what breathing apparatus is, but it's basically a big heavy set. What you carry your own oxygen on, you wear a mask, and you've got the full fire kit on. And we
Hmm.
had this building fire, and it was going well. We could see the smoke from the station a couple of miles away, and honestly, it was so hot outside. And then to put all that kit on, and we used the full set, which was 30 minutes wear. And I've never worked as hard and breathed as hard in a long time. And I think it was just combined with having a 4 hour run, being dehydrated, then straight into it, as soon as I'm into work. It was tough, but it's just you just get on with it.
And do you have to do special precautions to do with taking on liquids and things like that, or are you just rolling with the day and the heat just happens to be different over this period?
Yeah, you just sort of roll with it. I mean, in this situation, we're quite lucky because we got the fire knocked early on, and we didn't have to actually go into the building for long. So we only had one wear, and we were able to rehydrate afterwards. But yeah, it sort of whacked us, and I think the days after it does have an effect on your training, just because the 4 hour run. Then 30 minutes in you basically putting on some down jacket on, down pants, and
Mm.
it's not breathable, and you just sweat. It's hard, but yeah, it just takes a couple of days to get over it.
Does that mean with say because you've done some almighty challenges and some massive races, do you then have to almost schedule extra days to be off work before them to make sure that you won't get a really hard incident that would then potentially trash you for your big races?
Yeah, I mean it's hard, but in the past I've just sort of chanced my luck, and sometimes I've came out great. For example, quite a few times now. I've run the Three Peaks race in between nights, and I've even won it in between nights. So I've come off a night, went down, did the race, back up, back on nights, and it's worked fine. But like the other day, I did it sort of in between the night, and it wasn't great, to be honest, and I struggled. But I think that was a combination of the 29-mile race I had a couple of weeks ago and the heat. It was just so hot. So I think everything combined has a big effect on it.
And what do your colleagues make of the fact that you're training so ridiculously hard or racing so ridiculously hard, and then also putting night shifts and things? Are they sympathetic? Do they actually help by trying kind of adjusting in your favour, or do they brutalise you and just kind of rib you for it and pile on the pressure?
No, not. I mean, I work with a good bunch of lads and lasses. They're all into some sort of running of type, and we go out and run together in between shifts and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's just like anybody else at work. You go to work, you do your job. I don't expect anybody to carry us, and I get on with what needs done. So just part of the way it is.
Now you've recently won Man v Horse. How did you find that?
Honestly, I've wanted to do that race for so long. I can remember when Hugh Lobb won it in 2004, and obviously it was a big thing then because he was the first guy to win it, and he pocketed 25 grand, didn't he? So it was big. It was big news, and that was the first time I heard it. And I thought, that sounds pretty cool. I mean, you don't get to race a horse anywhere else there, but in Wales. So yeah, I mean, I entered it in 2018 after miss it because I got selected for GB, and then 2019 come round, and 2020, and obviously COVID hit, so it was cancelled for 2 years, and I finally got to run it. But yeah, great, absolutely brilliant event. I love the buzz of like everybody's buzzing on the morning. Like I don't know if you've been there, but everybody's buzzing on the morning. There's the horses trotting around and stuff, and it's just got such. The only thing I can compare it to was like Zagama, the full little village or town. Absolutely, everybody's out. All the volunteers, the locals, and everybody comes out to support. Even the little farms and stuff you run through on the route, they're out shouting for you and that. And yeah, I had some great comments off people, like even though that's my first visit to that sort of part of Wales.
And how did you find? Because we spoke to Jody, who I think almost beat the horse, but lost by 23 seconds quite a few years ago, kind of 4 or 5 years ago, and he was explaining the route. Is it still the same where halfway the horses all overtake you, and then you have the climb to kind of catch up and get ahead?
Yeah, so how it rolled out this year, usually there's a 15-minute gap between the runner starting and the horse and rider. But this year, for some reason, it was 7 minutes, and I haven't had a reason why that was this year. So the first horse actually passed me just after an hour, and it was on a sort of a gradual climb. But they only passed us for maybe 90 seconds, where the trail became a little bit more technical. The horse and rider knew there was a vet station coming up, so they wanted to rest the horse and allow its heart rate to come down before going into the vet check. And then I passed the horse again. I'd never seen the horse, but when the horse passed us, I thought, well, this is game over, isn't it? I mean, the horse is won now if it's that far up. Because at that moment in time, I thought the 15-minute gap was still in place. But yeah, I looked behind, and the horse and rider went into the vet check, and apparently speaking after the rider after the race, heart rate was really high, so she obviously worked the horse pretty hard. It took a lot longer for the heart rate to come down before she was released. So all that was interesting. Yeah.
Is that to protect the horse?
Yeah, so I only found this out afterwards, mind. So whatever the horse comes in with the heart rate, they have to be at 60 or below to leave. So they get a full check all over hooves. Some horses were getting new shoes fitted in the vet check and stuff. But yeah, there's the horses are well looked after, so they'll check at the start, they
Mm.
checked in the middle, and checked at the end. And this is just one of the things to go through to keep the horses safe, I guess.
And do you get a sense then that there are some jockeys who are far better at pacing to ensure that they don't have to wait and they kind of almost fly through, or is it very dependent on the day and the horse?
Yeah, well, I think it obviously it depends on a few things. I guess the weather plays a big part of it as well. If it's a lot hotter. One of the riders I was speaking to after the race who finished second horse was telling us that these races where you've got to keep the pace steadier and keep the heart rate down.
Mm.
Obviously, on this, you could either opt for going at a steady pace, getting out the vet check quicker, or I guess you could sort of push the horse a little bit more, going a little bit higher, but you're risking spending more time in the vet check. But obviously, with the horse being in there a little bit longer, it was more advantageous for me.
And how many years is it since it's been won? So how many thousands did you take home?
Yeah, so it was last one in 2007, and obviously rolled over 500 for each year minus the COVID years, and so I took 3.5 grand home, which was like a nice little surprise because I wasn't even going to turn up to the race because we had to cancel our holiday because the kids got chicken pox, and the only date available was like arriving back on the day of the race. So flying back from Tenerife on the Friday, our flight was delayed, so it pushed it into the morning. We arrived into Manchester Airport at 4:30 a.m. I just spent, 4 hours on a flight with a 1-year-old on my lap, so I didn't get any sleep at all. We spent another hour waiting for baggage and stuff, and I got out of the airport at 6 o'clock. Made the 3-hour drive over to Wales. There in time just to pick my number up. I arrived at like 9:15, and you had to pick your number by 9:30. And yeah, made it just in time and did the race. Drove 5 hours home with no sleep.
Wow, was that? Did you travel with the family then, or did they travel back by themselves?
Yeah, so what we had planned, like, because I had really wanted to do it, I wanted to do it for years, and to miss it
Mm.
another year was like it was just a bit frustrating. So we said we'll go down in 2 cars, park at the airport, and if I decide to
Mm.
do it, you know, go and do it. If not, I can just come home. And so yeah, so the family went home in the car. They had to stop in at the services and have a decent sleep because Sophie was so tired. But yeah, I mean, I didn't want to miss it. And even in the morning, getting off the flight, I was like, I don't know if I can do it. Like, I was so tired. But yeah, I just got on with it and did it.
And how hard is the race? So it's what, 20 so miles?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it was nearly 22 mile. I can't remember the feet. I think it's something like 4,000 feet of
Okay.
ascent. Yeah, it's a pretty fast race. I mean, there's a mixture of everything in there, bits of road, technical trails, uh, forestry, running on big open tracks, then there's bits of single track and everything. Yeah, it's a really fun race. I didn't find it's not one of the hardest races I've had. I've finished
Mm.
feeling a lot tireder, but I finished and I felt as though I could have went on for another 10 mile.
Well, I mean, you probably need that energy just to get home without falling
Yeah.
asleep and driving off the road. So,
Yeah, I think I was a bit worried about that because it was a long drive home, and but I think I was that sort of that much adrenaline going through us, and I was so shocked to beat the horse that it was like I was bouncing really.
and does that change? I mean, you've not been before, but do you get a sense that the energy of the whole place is lifted when someone beats the horse? Is it something that all the runners want and all the locals want, or?
Yeah, I think I feel as though it was that. Like I didn't spend a lot of time because I finished the race and I knew I had a long drive back, and I didn't
Mm.
want to get into that, late night where you feel even tireder. So I, I I wish I could have stayed because even after the race there was a real buzz around the place, and
Mm.
it was it would have been, let's say, it would have been good crack, I think, staying in the pub later on at night. There was a lot going on, so maybe next year I'll try and get an entry and go back and stay the weekend.
I guess you're only going to win 500 quid at the maximum there if you go back next year.
Well, yeah, I mean, the money doesn't bother me. Like the event sells it for me, to be honest. Like, and it'd be great to go back and be the first person to win it 2 years on the trot.
You've got to think literally on the trot as well because it gets horses. And you've got to
Yeah.
think if you're returning, you'd imagine that the riders themselves are probably going to like strategize and they're going to want to take you and not lose their crown for a second time. You'd assume.
Yeah, you would think so. And in my head, because there was a 2 year rest, I was thinking like maybe, maybe the horses haven't been running for a couple of years. They've had a couple of years off with COVID and stuff. So maybe this is the best
Mm,
chance to beat the horse. But yeah, I mean the horse, the race itself changes slightly every year, I think, because of land permissions and stuff.
mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean it might be in favour of the horse next year. You just don't know.
And then before we kind of go back into, I guess, more of your history, you also recently, over the summer, did the 24-hour relay race with Salomon, where you were trying to set the world record for fastest distance by a mixed relay team in a day. Like how was that?
Yeah, I mean that was something totally different from what I've ever done before. It was good because I got to test myself in a slightly different way from normal.
Mm,
It wasn't easy. The last so there was four of us, and we had to run for a 1 hour slot after each other. So once you run your
mm,
1 hour slot, you had 3 hours off before you went again, and we repeated this 6 times in 24 hours. So the first sort of 3 or 4 hours for me was, it was okay. I covered, decent sort of distances. I think averaging somewhere just below maybe 6 minute mile, but I sort of really dipped in the last couple. I struggled a bit from the worst thing was I thought eating would be really easy,
mm.
but because I was feeling a bit ill after I finished, and by the time I had a shower and sit down, I had 2 hours to eat, and then I didn't know what to eat, and I really
Mm.
struggled with like stomach issues and cramps, which I'm still getting cramps today, and I don't know if it's knock-on effect because of that event, or maybe I'm noticing more now. But yeah, I mean, I found that really hard, especially I was the last person to go as well. So once I had finished,
Mm.
that was the 24 hours done, and I think that mentally made it a little bit tougher. And but I did vote for that as well. Like I'm my own worst enemy. Like I asked to be the last person, so there you go.
What was it that appealed about that? Did you want the glory leg, or is it because you could compare yourself to what everyone else had run?
Yeah, I think because I knew mentally it would be harder. Seeing everybody run their legs first and being the last person to say like, I've still got to go, and anything I do, I try. I don't mind doing it the hard way, and that's what I've always done in the past. So it's just sort of yeah, it's just what I fancied really.
Had you done track prior to that that period?
No, not really. I think yeah, I've done bits of road and that, but nothing really flat to be honest. That's the biggest flat event I've done really.
And did you how did you adapt your training? Were you doing things like track interval sessions or were you just training typically and then turned up?
Yeah, well, it worked. It worked quite well into my training, I think, because during that winter and sort of autumn, I wasn't getting out on the fells a lot. A lot of my training was based from home, which I live on the coast, and although it's hilly, it's like it's got nothing like no big hills, so it's a lot more flat
Mm.
running and a lot more road, a lot more traily, and I think just it was just a coincidence that I wasn't getting out on the fells because of some other stuff what I had going on. So yeah, it worked in my favour really. But I didn't really change the way I do anything with regards to sessions. I still try to get some speed sessions in, some hill sessions. Um, yeah, and just used it sort of as a test of fitness really.
And how did you find what some deem monotony of going around a track repeatedly? Like, was that a struggle for you, or?
Yeah, I mean that was another thing. It's like it's so easy to forget now. 6 months down the line, nearly. Well, just nearly 6 months. Yeah, but
Mm.
that was really tough. Like, because they had the clock over the finish line. So obviously, every time you did a lap, you were seeing the clock, and it was just ticking down like minute by minute, and it was, to be honest, it was torture, and it was hard to put that out your mind because it's there. It was like a massive big clock.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, for mental toughness, I can't understand these people what run on track for 24 hours. That must be mind-boggling, and I can't, hats off to them, but I can't understand how they do it. Like, it's unbelievable.
And did you try and zone out and almost get into a meditative state, or were you just always in the moment and just always screaming to yourself, "Ah, can't get through this, come on."
Well, I had the GPS on, so just to sort of keep a clock of how quickly I was running, because I was cautious. I didn't really want to, even the first lap, like, I watched everybody else go off, and they were absolutely fun. Like, I mean, I think Matt, one of the other guys, was doing 5.5 minute miling for an hour, and Ali Lavin, she was doing, like, I think 5:45 or something, and I was thinking more like 6.25 or something. Um, but yeah, it's that was another hard bit, the pacing game. I had the GPS on, and obviously there was loads from Salomon there as well, and they
Mm.
they had a ride around the few times, so it does take your mind off it having a chat. But I didn't speak them much them last couple of hours.
And have you had to do quick recoveries before in the races you've done, or runs? Have you done relays before? And did it throw up any other challenges other than the food?
Yeah, I'm pretty much used to, because most days I do run twice a day,
Mm.
unless I have one long run. So, and sometimes it's like drop the kids off at 9, go have a run, and then have a run at dinner time before I pick them up. So I've got enough time to have a shower and get sorted. So I've had two runs within like a 4 hour period. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I've got used to that over the years, and I've done a few events where you've got to recover quickly for the next day. But I think getting older, I think recovery becomes harder. So, I think I feel it a lot more now than I used to sort of 10 years ago.
Do you think then you'll change are you having to adapt, and are you actually rethinking your sessions with the next 10 years in mind, or do you think you'll always try and do two a day and just see how long you can hang on for?
Yeah, I think as long as I feel as though I can be, as long as I feel as though I can win, turn up and win, I think I'll put the effort into training to try and be as good as I can. But once I get that feeling, I know this sounds, a bit, once I'm not winning, it's like, you know, part of winning is part of it for me. And although I love
Mm.
running and I'll always run, competing, part of winning, it's all in one bundle for me. So I think once I start sort of tailing off a little bit, I think I will sort of race less, to be honest.
Do you think, because it's interesting you say that, I feel I'm not, obviously not to your standard, but having been injured and coming back, I'm really struggling with purpose because everything
Yeah.
was always focused on a certain pace or a certain level, knowing I had something coming up. And now that I don't have that, I do find myself a little bit kind of cast adrift when you look and you think, well, why do I need to go and do that tempo run? Why do I have to do this hard session? When the result of it is just that I've done it, but it doesn't lead to anything more. Like, do you think you're going to cut back on running a lot then, as well as the racing, or do you think you'll always have that joy of running?
Yeah, I think I'll always have the joy of running, but the purpose won't be there anymore to train as hard as I do now. Um, I think I will still do sessions and stuff, but yeah, I think that as I sort of, have a decline as I get older, I think it will cut back a little bit, um, but you never know. Things might change, and one bad run or one tired run can make you feel as though why you're asking all these questions, like
Mm.
why do I do it? Why do I put my body through this when I'm end of the day I'm competing in fell races locally and stuff, and what's it all for? And I think this is something a lot of people ask themselves, and and it can come from, like I just said before, like a bad run or a tired run, or you've had a bad
Mm.
week, and then the end of it, you're asking, well, why am I going out flogging myself for a session when I'm knackered? So, but yeah, it is a tough game to keep on going sometimes, like you just said.
And do you find that would you rather win like a big local race where everyone you know is involved and you're kind of the local hero, or would you rather win a race that no one local really knows, but it's maybe a higher standard but further afield? Like what is it that you think that you get from the win? What is it that motivates you for that win?
Yeah, that's a hard one because although I like the win, it's it's part pushing yourself as well. So it comes hand in hand, I think. So if you turn up and you've had a really good run and you've won and you've pushed yourself and you know that you've left it all out there, it's like I find that really satisfying.
Hmm.
So there was one race the weekend where well, a week ago on Saturday, and it was Wasdale Fell Race, which is quite a tough fell race in the lakes. It's 21 mile with 9,000 feet over some of the roughest and the highest mountains in the lakes, and
Yeah.
I set off pretty hard, and I built up a little lead, but it soon dwindled, and I got to the point where I was like, I was absolutely breathing out me ass, to be honest. And it was that way for the last 2 hours of the race. And slowly but surely, people come by and stuff, and I was just concentrating on putting one foot in front of the other. And in that race, 25% of the field dropped out on that day. So it just shows how tough the race was and how tough the day was because it was really hot. But yeah,
Mm.
I feel as though by finishing, although I was absolutely flogged, and but the descent finishes down Scafell Pike, and usually if you're racing that, it would take you 16 to 20 minutes. It took us over 40 minutes on this particular day. I had pins and needles in my arms and stuff. I had to lay down at one point. I was like,
Mm.
I felt as though I was going to fall over, but I got something really satisfying out of that because I pushed myself a little bit further. Okay, I didn't get the win, but that day was just about persevering, and I think I needed
Mm.
something like that to happen, just to sort of give us a little bit of a test, to be honest. Like,
Because kind of going back to the start then, like at what point did you realize that you loved fells, and at what point did you realize you were good at running, and that's particularly fell running?
um, well, early on when I first started at school, I was like, I was never the best. I ran with a group of lads, and I was probably out of 10 of them, I was sort of eighth best out of them. So, but yeah, I went to my first fell race, and it was a typical sort of winter's day in West Cumbria. It was wet, it was sleety. The fields were covered in like deep mud and stuff. But I ran that first race, and something just clicked with us. I played a little bit of rugby. I played football. I done other team sports, but yeah, something just really clicked with us with fell running. And
Mm.
since then, I was like, I just got obsessed, and it's never stopped, to be honest. And um, but yeah, it's something. I started it back then when I was sort of 15, and but it's something I'll see out for the rest of my life, I think.
And because was it what is it about fell running that you think is so appealing to you? Is it the slog that you enjoy?
Yeah, again, it's a mixture of both. I like the toughness of it. I mean, it's really hard to like some fell races are really hard. I understand road running is hard for a completely different reason because you're going flat out as fast as you can for as long as you can, and really to me that's probably is a bit harder because you get no rest period. Where in a fell race, once you've climbed to the top, you do get a tiny bit of rest going downhill, even though you're still running fast. But yeah, fell running, especially in the lakes, I think because the majority of my running are on the lakes and stuff, and I'll go out and just spend hours out there on my own, and yeah, just being out in a wide open space and being able to put myself through a bit of pain. Um, yeah, it's just combined together is just perfect for what I'm looking for, really.
'Cause do you think what do you think makes you good? Is it the fact that you train well? Do you think it's natural talent, or do you think you've got an ability to push into that pain harder than and more than others?
Um, yeah, I don't know because yeah, I look at sometimes I look at races and stuff, and one what always sticks in my mind. Can you remember when the Brownlee brothers finished that race, and what I think
Mm,
Alistair helped Johnny into the finish and stuff, and you
yeah.
look and they've put themselves through the absolute mangle to get to that finish, and yeah, I look at myself and I sort of compare it to that, and I think I finished the race, but absolutely flogged, but I'm not as flogged as that. And I can't understand why that is. Maybe it's something in your body what kicks in, and it's like a reserve to hold back a tiny bit. But yeah, I finished my third amount of race absolutely shattered. But yeah, a majority of them I feel as though I finish and I've got more running inside us. Um, yeah, it's a difficult one, like.
And because what struck me when we met first met was for a runner, and maybe it's slightly different for fell runners, but not in my mind. You're incredibly like muscular. Um, you you seem to be a lot like heavier set, more muscles than most runners I know. Like, is that something that comes with the job, or something natural to you, or something you've actually worked on?
Um, yeah, I think that's well. No, at work we get to use the gym a lot. So,
Hmm.
and although I don't lift weights, I do a lot of core stuff. So it's mainly like pull up, um, press ups, dips, and stuff like that. And it's a lot of sort of body weight worked exercises. And I think it's just natural. It's something I enjoy. What goes along well with running. And I understand that. Yeah, I'm probably not the lightest at like I sort of hover around 78 to 80 kilograms, and but I guess I'm 6'4". But yeah, that's some it's just part of us, and I do understand that if I was lighter, I'll maybe run a little bit quicker. But yeah, I prefer to do what I enjoy and just you know do what I can in running really with what I've got.
And do you think that kind of core strength and overall strength has that helped with resisting injuries?
Um, yeah, I think it does in a way, but I mean, I say that, and I've got plantar fasciitis, and I've had that for 2.5 years now, like so, um, bits like that. But yeah, I haven't been without injuries over the years, so I
Mm.
wouldn't say it's contributed much to staying injury free. Um, but yeah, it's like you say, it's just something I really enjoy, and
Mm.
at work we get to use the gym together with the rest of the lads and lasses on shift, and we often do circuits and stuff, and it's just part of it. And for the job as well, you've got to be strong. I mean, you can get away without doing much in the gym, but I think it's always good to be a little bit stronger than you need to be.
Yeah, I guess that because you're always lifting heavy equipment, aren't you?
Yeah.
And and so then, in terms of the races, then when you started to realise you were good at long, you've had such a varied career. Like, which are the wins or the successes that really stand out to you as being either the ones you've enjoyed the most or the ones that you're most proud of or the hardest?
Um, I think Sagama was a big one for me because I feel as though the previous year in 2008 I had ran in Europe. I'd raced in Andorra and I'd raced in Italy at a race which ran from Italy to Switzerland. And I placed reasonably well. I think I was seventh in one of them, eighth in the other. And then obviously the following year I went into the World Skyrunner Series, it was called then. I don't know if it still is now. And Degama was the first race up. So I got picked up by Salomon late in 2008 and then went out with some of the Salomon team to do Zagama. And I guess Zagama sticks in my mind a lot because, yeah, it was a fantastic race and I won it. And, it was probably a breakthrough race for me. The crowds and that, everybody knows the crowds at Zagama. It was just like that back then in 2009. Maybe there's more people now, but it was such an amazing experience to experience that. The party afterwards, absolute crazy. I've never known anything like it. And it sort of put my name out there really. So that's a big one for me. It sticks out, and I feel lucky to say that I've been one of the winners in the past. Because Killian's won it for the last 10 years on and off or something. So I was just lucky that year that Killian didn't turn up. But yeah, that's one. And I've got there's other races like what are local as well. There's one called Blencathra Fell Race, and I'd raced it for a few years, and I actually set the record in 2009 when I come back from Sagana. So a guy who I look up to called Alan Bonus, he was a local guy who's he ran for GB on the mountains and stuff, and ran some quick times on the road, and he had held it since 1989. He was the only person to ever go under the hour, and he ran 59 and a half, something like that. And yeah, so to take his record, and I took it by over a minute, it was unreal, really, because I look up to people like that, and you think you never get close till people like that. So yeah, to take a little record like that was amazing, really. And it's only last year where it was made a championship race, and they changed the course slightly, but I don't think the times were, I think Jacob Agkin was a little bit faster than me, but his course was slightly shorter on the start and the finish. So yeah, but yeah, I feel to take little records like that, I know it doesn't mean a lot to other people, and some people have never heard of it, but to me, that's bigger than a lot of big races I've run abroad.
Because it does feel, because we've talked about the lakes a fair bit with James Atherton. I think he was the first person on the pod to talk about it who moved up there to get good at fell, and it does feel as if everyone knows the local records, everyone knows the local races, that the clubs have these huge rivalries. Is it as, I guess, historic in its viewpoint, the running culture out there as it seems to be from the outside?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the fell. I mean, I'm not a seasoned championship runner. I don't run the English championships ever. In fact, I've never done it as an adult. I've done it under 20. But yeah, the fell running community is a tight knit community. That you turn up to a race, and the chances are that you're racing the same people you did a couple of weeks ago at a long race. So yeah, everybody seems to know everybody, and I guess it's like people. I guess it's like Europe, like when they say, oh, have you done UTMB? In the lakes they say, oh, have you done Borrowdale? Have you done Bosdale? Have you done these big races? And I guess it's the same, but on a smaller scale. Just a really a close, tight knit community.
And are you seeing because we've spoken to Nikki a few times about how things like the Bob Graham now, that the routes are completely different to how it used to be, because so many more people have run it, and also because it's been drier, that there actually are established paths now in areas that there weren't. Are you seeing in all the in these smaller races and in fell running in the area in general, that actually things like feet in the clouds, the popularization of trail, the easier access. Is the community changing, and are the routes changing in their nature as well?
Yeah, so I don't think the community's changing. I mean, I think them old school runners are getting less and less. And
Mm.
obviously there's an influx of like younger runners coming through, and they've just got a different way of wanting to race and stuff. And but yeah, I think there's the amount of people coming through. Right now there's a hell of a lot of events on, so you you could go this weekend and probably find about 7 or 8 events in a small area, not in the lakes, but I mean dotted around the northwest.
Mm.
And they
Mm.
can range from, trail races to fell races and stuff. So in a way, it probably is changing slightly, but I think your classics like Borrowdale and like Wasdale and the Ennerdale horseshoes, what have been around for a while and had a lot of history. Yeah, you're still getting the old diehards turn up to them who's run them for the like last 25 years, which is pretty cool, to be honest. Like it's great to see that sort of commitment to the race.
And do you, because I've been traveling with the Golden Trail, and they've had a taste of not fells, but with things like the heading to Scotland for the last few years. They've got a sense of some of the kind of terrain that you can get in Britain. Do you feel that there's almost a disconnect still between trail running in Europe and trail running in the UK, but in particular in the fells, that it's still a different sport? Or do you think they are growing closer together?
Mm, I mean, to me, it's all running. It's like going to the shop and buying a pint of milk. You've got green label, you've got red label, and you've got blue label. That's all. But basically, it's milk, isn't it? So yeah, to me, I see it as all the same. To be honest, I mean, I know fell running, you've got to maybe have to navigate, and the route isn't marked and stuff. But yeah, to to me, I don't differentiate between them all. I see a trail race or a fell race, a sky race. They're all the same.
Hmm. Now, when I was on the Golden Trail, one of the things that was mentioned, you happened to crop up in conversation between a couple of the Salomon team staff, and they were in particular mentioning, I can't remember what the night was now, but you've got quite a reputation for celebrating, shall we say, after races, and spending as much time socializing after a training session as you do, like kind of training hard. Like, is that something that's always been throughout your career?
Well, back then I was younger. I didn't have kids, and I had a lot more free time on my hands, and I think that's part of it. I mean, you turn up to a fell race, and some races they go out and they drink afterwards, or if they're staying over somewhere, or but yeah, I mean, I could probably guess in particular which it was, but when we used to turn up to Salomon Advanced Week, obviously it was a week testing gear, and it was the first one I went to in, I think it was 2010, and it was in sort of the south of France, around Ventoux area. And at the end of the week, they usually say, right, we've got your little surprise. I've been scuba diving, I've done Firefighter, and in this particular time it's wine tasting. I'm not a wine drinker, but when everybody's there and they're all testing the wine, you do as everybody else is doing in the south of France in the vineyard. So yeah, that night I got a little bit too much wine, but I still managed to race the following day. I think it was 1-2 half marathon. So yeah, still managed to race.
And have you always, in the younger days, did you ever find that it affected performance? And were there kind of any times when you look back and think, oh man, those particular nights I went a bit overboard?
No, because although I've done what I've done in the past in races, and I've never I've took it serious, but I've not took it serious. You know, at the end of the day, it's a hobby. You know, I'm not making thousands out of doing racing. You know, it would be a different
Mm,
thing if you were like a sponsored athlete where you were making a lot of money and you know it was
mm.
sort of you're making a living. But yeah, it's always been a hobby, and I, I've liked to think that I'm an opportunist, and I've took anything what's been put in my path, what's come along, what I could do within reason. And I feel as though, you know, if Salomon said to us tomorrow that, you know, that's it, we can't sponsor you anymore, I feel as though I've had a really good run, and I feel lucky and privileged to being part of what I've been part of over the 10 years. Well, what is it, 20, nearly 14 years I've been with them.
Now, I've got a few questions that from the D-banners, the listeners. I know one question that we had actually a lot of the National Run Show as well, to do with just training around having a full-time job and training around like night shifts. Have you got any tips or secrets to kind of how you manage to train so effectively when you are working so hard and your hours are so unpredictable? Well, so changeable more than unpredictable.
Yeah, I mean, so I work 2 days, 2 nights, 4 days off, so I'm quite lucky in that way. But yeah, I mean, before day shift, I think it comes down to the person and motivation. I mean, I've
Mm,
always got the motivation even through winter when it means getting up and running in the dark in the morning, running in the dark at the night. And I've seen us go out as, you know, before work as early as like 4 o'clock, and at night time I've seen myself go out as late as 10 o'clock. And I guess it at the end of the day, it drops down to the person how much they want something, or how much they want to achieve something, how much they're willing to put in. Um,
mm.
but yeah, if with regards to tips and stuff, it's I do the 2 night shifts, and you know we do get a bit of downtime at work. I wouldn't say we go to sleep. Um, but yeah, training in the morning after night shift is really difficult, and I can understand it's difficult for everybody. But I think the most important part is once you finish shift, that is when you're going to be at your best for that morning. I think so. It's important. I think get out, um, have a run as soon as you're finished, and then once you're home, you can shower. You know, sit down, and then you can chill out and rest if you need to. Or in my case, I've got the kids, so I've got to look after the kids. But yeah, I mean, getting out and getting it done sooner rather than later. So don't sit down, don't go home, don't have your tea, you know, just get out, run, and then recover later.
And what does your missus make of it all? Is she kind of almost longing for the day that you're going to semi-retire, or does she understand it's part of kind of your psyche?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky in that way as well. I've got a really understanding family, and you know, they've supported us through everything really. And but yeah, it does like obviously I've got Joy now, and he's been here for 18 months, and it does. I found myself a bit more restricted over the last 18 months since we've had him.
Mm.
You know, sometimes I can't get out early for that morning run because I've got to sort Joy out and then Isabel for school, and you know, so it does restrict in a way. But you know, I find time for the day. Like you know, if he's having his nap and I put him in his pram, I can sort of, even though it's not like a run, I'm still getting out with the pram and doing a few miles. And I think that's important, just getting out in the fresh air and being outside. And I think that's for me, that is something that I need every day. It's like a drug, and it is an obsession, but I need it to keep going every day. I need to get out.
And what do you think your secret of success has been?
See, I've looked at some of the things I've done, and I don't think, you know, I've won some races, but I haven't been that successful. I don't think. Um, you know, I've done well at some races, but yeah, no, I don't think I've been. I wouldn't say I've been a successful runner. I think I've done well,
Mm.
but yeah, we'll leave it at that.
And what have you got left on your bucket list of races to do?
There's yeah, there's stuff I still want. I would like to win, but my chances of winning them now as I'm getting older is just becoming more difficult. But yeah, I always said I wanted to do a fast Bob Graham in summer, but I feel as though my chances of doing that is sort of dwindling away. I think the reasons behind that are getting the amount of training to do myself
Mm.
justice, and I've got little niggles here and there what I need to get seen to, and I know I won't be able to keep the training up to keep back going. But if I said there was something I really wanted to do before I stopped competing, I think it'd be get out to sort of Asia and race a bit more out there. I have done over the years. I've raced out there quite a lot. I've done Kinabalu Climathon in Borneo 3 times, and I've done Singapore 100. I've done a little race in Thailand, but yeah, there's so many other races, just little ones. You don't need to be massive events, just little races in different places. What I would like to do, but yeah, Asia would be this place to go for me.
And just kind of picking up on what you were saying before about how you didn't think you'd been that successful, is there an element of dissatisfaction then with what you've achieved? And would you say that you think if things had gone differently, you maybe would have achieved more?
Possibly. I mean, even at the minute, like I've sort of had this. I've had a problem which's been bothering us for quite a while, and I know it is restricting what I do. And sometimes I get out in the morning and it aches for quite a long time before I can
Mm.
sort of feel as though I can stand upright. And um, yeah, I think little bits like that have held us back a little bit, and then obviously family comes along and it restricts you a little bit. And I feel as though sometimes when I've done really well to qualify for an event for, a championship or something like that, and then I've turned up to the championship, and I feel as though every time I've done that, I haven't done myself justice. Like
Mm.
20th just recently, I think is that, yeah, I don't feel as though it's a true showing of what I could probably actually do even now.
Mm.
But I guess that's just some way sometimes it goes, and but on the same hand, I've had them days where you feel as though you're absolutely bouncing, and like days like Sagama, like that Blencathra what I mentioned, and
Mm.
the World Trail Champs in Wales. You know, I think it was my third ultra. So I was really violently ill the day before, but I turned up and won that by 10 minutes, and I felt as though at the end I could run another 50 mile. So you know, but hey,
I didn't actually know the circumstance of that story. Incredible. And would you say then that's probably your kind of, if you were to say your peak performance, would that be it?
um. Yeah, I mean that's a hard one. I think I wouldn't say that was it was maybe one of the peaks, but I feel as though over the years I've had a few different peaks. I feel as though I was running well in sort of 2009. I was running well at times around 2013. I think I went like I was saying to one of the lads over there, they were asking us something. I said I think I went like a couple of years, like 2013, 2014, maybe where I didn't lose a race. I think the only race I lost was like one road race or something in that 2 year period. Fair
Mm.
enough, like, some of them were them races that year were there's obviously the World Trail Champs, the Otter Trail, Dodo Trail, there's a couple of the races in Europe and a lot of local races as well. But yeah, I think I didn't lose a race for a couple of years then.
I mean, incredible. And do you, I guess that must be probably where the frustration stems from. If you know you've done so well for such a period, to then just have
Yeah,
anything else just feels like, yeah, you've underperformed, even though you may not have done. It's just that you had a golden period,
yeah.
in some
That's
ways.
maybe the reason behind it. I mean, yeah, and if you'd asked us, 7 years ago, it'd maybe been a totally different story. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Ricky. And have you got any big races people can kind of come and say hello at in the future, or that you're going to be in the next few months?
Yeah, I've not planned anything particularly. I'll turn up to Borrowdale again and give that another go. I think I've won it maybe 8 times now, and the record for wins there is 11 races. So it'd be great to take that. But I think my chances of going, it's getting smaller and smaller. So But yeah, apart from that, I'll be probably 50 miler in December. I'll be up, but yeah, apart from that, I've got no plans really.
And if people want to follow you on social media, or follow you in other formats, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so just Ricky Lightfoot on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and you should find us, no bother.
And do you think your name has almost nominative determinism? Do you think that's helped you become a runner, or is that just a complete coincidence?
Well, it's funny you should mention that because when winning the horse, obviously I did a lot of interviews from, one of the randomest one was a TV interview with a presenter in Kazakhstan, to the American radio, Irish radio, all over really. But yeah, that was the first time I've heard that being used, and I was like, I did have to look it up to see what it meant. But yeah, it's crazy, like, really, because a lot of people were saying that afterwards when nobody's ever said it before.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. I guess they've come from an outsider's perspective, and they probably know less about the details of the race, so that's the first thing they're drawn to, rather than the actual.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and good luck with retaining your Borrowdale trophy for the 9th, 10th, and hopefully 11th time. And if you're ever in London and need to play a place to crash or someone to run with, please give us a shout.
Oh, awesome. Thanks very much for having us on. It's been great to talk.
My pleasure. Cheers, Ricky. So there you go, dude. That's Ricky. Wanted to interview him for a long time. He's, as you can tell, actually, his results, I think, are so much better than he acknowledges or realizes, because I don't think he understands how much how much easier it is to not have a job where you're doing all your core, you're working out with going to fires, you're lifting on this heavy equipment, and having night shifts and constant tiredness. So I think his performance has been absolutely tremendous given all that. But if there's some guests you'd like us to interview in the future, then let me know. David at badboyrunning.com. Jody's away on holiday at the moment, which is why it's just me today. And if you like this episode, then some other episodes that are along similar things. We've spoken to Nikki Spinks, I think, a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, where she talks about things like the Bob Graham rounds, all the different rounds that she's set the double records in. Jasmine Paris as well. She talks about breaking the Bob Graham rounds, setting the Bob Graham round records. One of our very first episodes, James Appleton, really, really interesting, because he was a friend of ours, and John Albans as well, same team, who recently won Mont Blanc Marathon. James moved to the Lake District to really embed himself in the trail running community and get good at trail running, partly to help with his obstacle racing, but then actually I think he just preferred it to obstacle racing. And so he gave a really interesting insight from more of an outsider's perspective of how bell running was different, and a lot of the little nuances and things that you kind of notice as someone going into a scene for the first time. So that was really, really good episode, and James is a tremendous friend as well. So thanks for listening, guys. If you could review, that really, really helps, because that gives us our credibility with future guests. Any feedback, letters at badboyrunning.com, and we will see you next time. Take care. Bye, 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 bye.
Fuck you, buddy.